Hey everyone, it's your Peacekeeper, and it's time for our next video in our How to Play series on the Japanese battleship line. This is the Tier 9 Izumo class of paper battleships. The Izumo is a class of battleships that were part of the 1936 design study for a super battleship concept that would eventually become the Yamato class battleships. The official design code for the Izumo that is in game is the A140J2. The design of the ship is actually the only design from the A140 series to have 16-inch guns, as all the other designs would have the 460mm guns that were actually built and put on Yamato, even though those designs all say that the ships would have 40cm guns. So a little bit of trickery there on the part of the Japanese Navy, trying to conceal this design study, the actual capabilities of the Yamato class of battleships from the rest of the world. The final hull upgrades for this ship are theoretical upgrades that the class would have probably received had the ship actually been built. You can also see that there's a number of different design cues taken from the Nelson class, or Rodney class, however you wish to call it, of British battleships, and with the forward gun layout. This layout, as Izumo has it, is actually an inferior layout compared to the way Rodney and Nelson had it on theirs. Nelson and Rodney had this rear turret would be facing forward into the back of the center turret. Also, we'll talk about this a little bit more in the in-game part of this, because there is no service history, because paper ship. This center turret doesn't do a 360. Why? Dear Wargaming, quality of life buff right there. There's obviously nothing that is prohibiting it from doing a 360, so can we please get it? That would be awesome. Anyway, let's talk about the in-game playstyle. I really don't have much positive to say about Izumo. When angled, the ship can mount some pretty hefty shells, but the large size mean that there's also plenty of places for it to accept incoming fire. This is especially problematic when it comes time to deal with those pesky HE spamming cruisers. You'll notice just about every surface on this ship is 32mm, which means pretty much anything with, I think it's 156mm or larger, so 6-inch or larger guns is going to come up with lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of HE damage. Now you can see it does have, a fairly thick 14-inch belt, and it's not laid out nearly as crazy of a configuration as Yamato is, but it still has one of these stupid angled foredecks here that is just massive, and normal pens for days through here. So armor-wise, I mean, if you can bait them into shooting at your armor belt, there's a pretty decent chance that it's not going to go through. It does have a turtleback armor scheme, so I mean, if nothing else, you're pretty resistant to citadels as is. But the problem is your citadel, look at how big it is. Oh my. The other interesting part about this, as someone correctly pointed out, I gotta get rid of the armor viewer here to show it though, this rear hatchback here, if you can get battleship shells into that, is almost guaranteed to get a citadel hit. Just interesting side note. The gun angles on the ship are absolutely terrible, and that's because this third turret basically is limited in its firing arc by the middle turret, and that's part of the reason why the British Rodney and Nelson had a much better gun configuration by taking that turret and flipping it so that it was facing forward. That allowed the ship to present a much narrower profile when, shooting forward. And really, this design doesn't even really work when shooting aft either, because this front turret is limited by this massive shoot me here for normal pens bulkhead. So overall, this ship, you have to expose quite a bit of your side in order to actually use all of the guns on it. And speaking of those guns, that's probably the one side of this ship that is actually worth mentioning. they're not garbage. They're probably the flattest shooting 16-inch guns in the game. It's reasonably accurate, and the shells are no longer completely garbage, so the ship actually does decent damage. But I struggled for quite a while to actually get any decent kills with it. I don't know what it is about the Japanese battleships, but some of them just don't jive with me. Their gunnery just seems just a smidge off to me, where I'm just not reliably getting kills. And there are plenty of instances where I left people with less than 1,000 hit points, frustratingly. Another interesting side note worth mentioning is that Izumo does have a reasonable secondary battery. It is worth mentioning because it does have the full base range, that 7.7-ish, 7.5-ish base range that allows it to go to the full 10.6K, that magic number that you see on all the big secondary build ships. The problem is it's all entirely concentrated in 5-inch gun mounts, 6 of them per side. They are duals per side. I mean, it's a little bit more than a U.S. battleship has at this tier, Iowa, but really not worth, really not worth specking into, in my opinion. You do have this one 6-inch gun mount at the back. It really isn't very useful at all. I don't know. It fires AP, but it has such poor arcs. I don't know. Again, not really worth speccing this ship into secondaries, in my opinion. However, there are people who do it, and I'm sure they have all the success in the world. The downside to the secondary build is it puts you within 10.6K of enemy ships, and you don't have the maneuverability or turret traverse to fight effectively at those ranges. And so as a result, the ship tends to get walked all over. This ship is probably best played in the mid-ranges, that 12 to 16K range, 16 being at the long end. 10 to 15, those are probably more comfortable ranges. So you can see that 10.6 isn't going to get you much in the way of secondary stuff. Let's go over stats. She has 78,900 hit points. Her main armor belt is that lovely 14 inches. The torpedo protection, the damage reduction is 30%, which is not too shabby. It's also not terribly great either. Main battery consists of 3 triple 410mm 50 caliber guns. Those are 16.1 inch guns. The secondary armament, as we talked about earlier, it is primarily composed of 5-inch 40 cal Type 89A1 Mod 2s. Those are the dual armored 5-inch gun mounts. They also serve as part of your dual purpose gun mounts for your anti-aircraft suite. There are 12 of those dual mounts for a total of 24 total 5-inch guns. Plus, you do have this one 6.6-inch gun turret in the back. They have that 7.6, 7.7K range unupgraded. So if you were to throw in all the secondary upgrades, that would obviously push that up further. Main battery firing range is 21.7 kilometers. The reload is a 30 seconds, but I'm running the reload module. So we'll talk about that in a minute. Look at that muzzle velocity, though. 870 meters per second. Whoo! 21.7K range. Not all that useful out at max range. I mean, I guess you can take pot shots and stuff. In terms of anti-aircraft, it does have it is all in 25mm guns, with the exception of those 5-inch dual-purpose mounts. And you have 24 singles and 28 triple 25mm mounts. They kick in at 3.1K. Again, that's going to be without advanced firing training. So that will go out further, and AA builds will push it out even further. Not a whole lot of DPS there in the AA, which is kind of the downside of the Japanese battleship line. Max speed, 28 knots, turning circle of 890 meters, and a rudder shift time of a glacial 15.8 seconds. Concealment range, you might as well put a giant shoot me sign on this ship, 14.5K by sea, 12.1 by air, and that is a full concealment build on this guy. That's bad. Alright, let's talk about those upgrades. Auxiliary Armaments Mod 1. Yeah. Mostly, again, what little AA you do have is worth keeping. What secondaries you do have are worth keeping. So regardless of whether you do a secondary build or an AA build or a survivability build, I definitely still think that this is the best option at this tier. The second slot, Aiming Systems Mod 1. For the reduction in the dispersion of the main battery shells. I can't stress how important that is on these. It does bump out your secondary range 5% and decrease the dispersion by 5%, but I really think the added accuracy really helps the ship out. Again, secondary battery mod 2 there for if you're one of those people who wants to play this ship in a secondary build. AA Guns mod 2 for those of you who absolutely hate carriers and are willing to give up a little bit of damage per second to get, better AA. Personally, I would take at tier 9, there's not too many carriers out there at the moment. This being, June 27th, 2017. Carriers at tier 9 they exist, but they're not as common as they once were, and so not necessarily need to do a full AA build. Third slot, this one's probably gonna garner some upset. Main battery mod 3 is what I use, and you'll see me repeat this on Yamato. It's going to kill your traverse speed to get that, but at the ranges at which Izumo is actually useful, again, those longer, that 10 to 15k range, you're not noticing the reduction in turret traverse nearly as much as that increase in rate of fire, decrease in reload time. As important as that is, we're dropping that main battery reload down to 26.4 seconds. That actually adds up at the end of a match. You'd be surprised. A gunfire control system mod 2, I really don't think adding any more range to the ship is really going to get you much. Shooting at those longer ranges, yeah, it has the accuracy, but the chances of you hitting something aside from something that is stationary is pretty small. So I don't really see adding more to the range as an option. AA Guns mod 3, which is going to add 25% to the DPS of all your AA gun mounts. Here's your slot if you want your anti-aircraft build. Again, not really a big fan of those on Japanese battleships, and tier 9 carriers really aren't that big of an issue. And if they are, you're probably dead anyway, because the Japanese AA really isn't all that useful. And then if you're in the secondary build, here's secondary battery mod 3 for the reduction in the secondary battery reload time. In the fourth slot, damage control systems mod 1 is really the only one that I recommend that's going to reduce the chance of flooding and the chance of starting on fire by 3 and 5% respectively. You're simply not going to lose your engines or your rudder often enough to justify either of these two modules. If you are, chances are it's from a torpedo, and chances are you'll have damage control party available. In the fifth slot here, steering gears mod 2 is my recommendation. You already have a glacial 15.8 second rudder shift time with this module. If you take this off, it just gets worse. You really need that rudder shift module to use that third turret. One tactic that I saw recommended was to point the bow at enemy ships and then find targets that all three of your guns could shoot at off to the sides. Point the bow at the most lethal to you ship. Personally, I much preferred to, use the rudder to kind of bring all the guns to bear or shoot and then mask them again in between shots. So that's steering gear mod 2 is useful for that. Propulsion system mod 2 is pretty much useless on battleships. I just don't find the change in time it takes to get to full power, that -6 to 6 knot range, it's really not all that useful. Damage control systems mod 2 might have some uses if you are doing, a full-out survivability build. That's going to reduce the recovery time and the fire extinguishing time by 15%. In the last slot, you have two options here. This is the first tier? No, we talked about this with the Amagi. Target acquisition systems mod 1 is going to increase the assured acquisition range of ships by 50%. Again, that's going to be from, I think it's 2.5 up to 3.2k. So that's like if you're approaching a ship's in smoke, the range at which you'll spot them 50% further. The 20% spotting range is that gray cone when you're actually looking on your mini-map. And 20% to the acquisition range of torpedoes is somewhat useful, especially if you plan on doing a secondary build. Being able to see those a little bit further out would help. I personally have taken Concealment System Mod 1 for the 10% reduction in detection range and the 5% increase in dispersion of shells fired at my ship. I personally find that to be a little bit more useful. It allows you to get just a little bit closer to really punish ships, but at 14.5K, you're getting spotted from pretty far out. Anyway, let's go and talk about this more in a battle video. Alright, so as I said, I'm not really a big fan of Izumo. I just don't really care for the playstyle. I find it really frustrating to try and use all the guns, and it's not like US Battleship frustrating where your bow towards the enemy is the big hot ticket. This is a little bit less awesome in my opinion. You simply have to expose way more than any US Battleship ever would have to use that turret. This is a tier 9 match. It is on mountain range. I absolutely abhor this map. But this game actually ended up being a pretty decent game, so here we are, we're sticking to it. We have spawned all the way over on the A side, and generally when I spawn on this side, I like to head over towards the mountains. That plan will rapidly change, though, as the battle develops, simply because the ship is a little slow, and because of the enemy movements. So that's something that we got to pay attention to. This map, my frustration with this map is it's a very open map. There's not a whole lot of hard cover in it. What hard cover there is oriented in the wrong direction for it to be successfully utilized as cover. But, yeah. We'll see a little bit more about how frustrating this gets because there's simply no reprieve from enemy incoming fire. Oh, my. Okay, so here we are. We're going over to the islands by A. I'm gonna show you these awesome gun angles here. You can see it here, just how awesome these angles are. Look at how much of your ship you actually have to expose in order to utilize all three of your turrets. That is easily a good, solid 45-degree angle. If you're presenting that profile to bring all those to bear when enemy shells are incoming, you're almost guaranteed to take some damage, if not a lot of damage. Again, going back to that whole turtleback armor scheme is really great for resisting citadel hits, is ridiculously bad at removing normal penetrating hits. Thankfully, your belt armor is pretty tall on the side, so it's not like it's a huge issue. You can bounce shells if you stay angled pretty well. However, again, lots of surface area on this ship to hit with HE, to hit with AP. So it does take a lot of damage from just about every major source. We are almost to the islands, and our Akizuki, very interesting destroyer, by the way. If you haven't seen my How to Play series on it, the How to Play video on it, well, I have a whole series for the Japanese destroyers, but the history on Akizuki and the sub-ships in that class, or the subclasses, is actually really quite interesting. Anyway, so here we are. We're still not detected, so we know nothing's going into their cap, going into the A cap anyway. So we're going to shoot at this hipper. What's the worst that could possibly happen? Pretty good shot grouping. Again, you can see we're at 16k. You know, that's pretty good for 16k. We take off 3,500 damage. And because of the islands, we disappear right away. But look at what my team is doing, and look at what their team is doing. Yep, it's time to abort this maneuver. We are definitely not going to hang around very long in this fight because we're up here by ourselves facing off against 3 battleships, a cruiser, and I'm sure there is a destroyer somewhere in this mix. There almost always is. And sweet, another 2,500 damage. We're just racking up the damage with all of those awesome gun hits. Well, we got a hipper that's exposing a very large profile to me. It'd be nice if that other gun came into play. And now you can see we're getting ready to take some fire. And shot out. Sneak it over the end over there. You can see we take a lot of damage from every source. 6,300 damage, not too bad. 1 normal pen, 2 over pens. And Amagi is being a jerk face and shooting at us, but he misses. This is kind of a hard ship to miss. So that was just, again, long-range shooting with these ships tends to be very difficult to achieve consistent hits at long ranges. And, well, 2 damaging hits for, I didn't even see the damage number, but enough. Enough to justify the shot being fired anyway. And now you can see there are, he's slowing down. Like, dude, don't, okay, I mean, don't threaten me with the slow-moving broadside battleship profile. I mean, we'll just keep shooting at you. Because I know eventually I'm going to get some good hits like that. 9,800 damage. 1 shell lands from a Tirpitz, and we get a main battery knocked out. Awesome. Very, very awesome. Now we've got decision-making time because we are danger close to this island here. Oh, hey, we disappeared. Well, that's nice. And hopefully we can get all of our guns turned to this side because it looks like there's a fairly decent number of ships over there. And we've still got this Tirpitz, but we're going to have to make a move. We're going to have to turn here. So we're making our turn to the left here, and we're going to turn, and we're going to go to the left side of this island, and hopefully not run into the Amagi as we go past. And, oh, there's their Amagi. We should probably be shooting any minute now. So he's shooting at there. Well, we managed to actually, like, bait and overpen somehow. That's pretty nice. 7,800 damage. So we're up to 35,000 damage. We're only 5 minutes and 10 seconds into this match. Not too shabby. Unfortunately, because of the way we went with this, we're kind of going to have to expose a broadside. We get pretty lucky here because Tirpitz decides he's going to go elsewhere with his shots. Amagi is doing I don't know what. Alright, we'll turn back in and see what we can come up with. And there's another 9K. And we got Tirpitz here, who is very heavily invested in killing Mr. Domskoy. And that means he is... Oh, he's not interested. Okay, well, his secondaries are interested in killing Mr. Domskoy. And here we are going to hopefully get that kill and put him out of commission. No, 5,100 damage. 4 overpens did 5,100 damage. Ugh. So now we've got a really bad situation because I'm pushing, but I've got an Iowa on one side. I've got the Amagi. I think there's a Nagato over there on the other side. There's a Tirpitz still over on our right side. Oh my. Well, we'll shoot at the New Orleans as we turn around. And, hey, Citadel hit. 12,900 damage. We're up to 62. Still no kills, which is really kind of sad. This Iowa's not... Well, he is looking at me. So we don't want to give too much, but I have a feeling we're going to eat some pens here. Hey! We managed to survive, and it wasn't completely terrible. Now, because he's reloading, we're going to turn away, but we're gonna get some free cap reset points. Hey, we got 2 of them. So we're up to 6,400 damage, and at this point, we're kind of getting pushed in pretty hard over here. We've got some ships that are over at sea. I don't know really what they're doing. We got a Colorado that's chasing a Tirpitz. That's a fascinating thing. So I started to think, well, we'll just traverse our turrets over here, and we'll just turn back and face off against Amagi and Nagato, but then I started to realize, nah, we're going to put this island between us and all that fire because I don't want to be the only one over there because our team is bailing rapidly to this other side. We are ahead in number of kills. We are ahead in cap points. Those are both good things to be ahead in. And as a result, I'm feeling pretty good about this. Like, thinking, yeah, all right, let's start to push into B. Let's get this Iowa and this cruiser. I think it's a Pensacola. Yeah, get this Pensacola off of B so that the threat of us losing B is gone. Akatsuki shows up there on our screen. But we've got a Magi over here that I think really needs to somebody needs to put him out of his misery. So, shot out on a Magi, and as we watch here to see if we can get the 14k that we're going to need, nope. 8,500 damage. Well, we're not going to get another shot off at him, but looks like this Pensacola is exposing a pretty good broadside. If I can get around the island here to, get to him, that would be a good juicy kill. We're up to 72,677 damage, which, believe it or not, really isn't that bad of damage. It's just we're not getting any kills. No, it looks like Pensacola's running away. That's kind of unfortunate. Oh, look at what it is. It's a destroyer. My word. So, now we've got a destroyer off to our left-hand side. We're detected, which means torpedoes are most certainly incoming, which means we need to turn in and deal with it. Speaking of torpedoes, there's one. Oh. Alright, well, we're going to hold off. I mean, I know it's a Shiratsuyu, but we should have held off just a little bit longer on burning that damage control party, because he does have another set of torpedoes. No, we missed with our attempt to point blank shoot him down, and we are exposing a pretty good broadside to that New Orleans, which, American piercing ammo will definitely hurt. We're turning away from Poi because we definitely don't want involved, and look at what's presenting a juicy profile to us. Hey, Iowa! That's a nice broadside you got there. Pretty nice citadel, too. Sure would be a shame if somebody penetrated it. Double citadel for 18,000 damage, and down goes the Iowa. That was actually a pretty clutch kill right there, because we definitely needed to end that Iowa's reign of terror. He had been hanging out for so long. Hey, we actually managed to bounce something. He'd been hanging out for so long that if we didn't take him out, it would have definitely ended poorly. Was looking at that shores over there, but look what's coming around the bend. Patience, 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 and good night. 3 citadels, full health, basically Pensacola, and Shiratsuyu's coming out to play now. Well, we're up to 123,000 damage. Shiratsuyu has blown her load and missed. Now, trying to not turn too much until I see which direction all the torpedoes are going. And unfortunately, Shiratsuyu manages to disappear before I can get this salvo off. Really kind of unfortunate that is. Up to 980 points. I guess we'll shoot at... nope, not shooting at Nagato because the game is over. So one of the things to keep in mind with Izumo is that it's really not that strong of a ship. 123,844 damage, 1,738 base XP. It's not that... Here's the detailed and the credits screen. It's really not that strong of a ship, and unfortunately, the grind is long. I really did not enjoy playing this ship at all. It needs that 360 turret traverse turret for the middle one to come up, and then I think it would be alright. Anyway, I'm your Peacekeeper. Like, comment, subscribe, and thank you for watching.